Welcome to the Why We Advocate podcast. I'm your host, Jasmine Uribe, and with us today is Aysia Evans, Nova's Campus Culturally Specific Program Manager. We're excited to talk to you all about advocacy and the initiatives that Nova has planned to celebrate community. Let's dive right in. Hi, Aysia. How are you?
Hey Jasmine, I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing great. All right, so here's our first question. So this year's conference theme is celebrating community. Tell me more about Diaspora Dialogues and how this fits into the conference theme and networking activities you have planned this year.
Yeah, so Diaspora Dialogues is something that I came to you about last year during my first year at Nova, because I noticed that there was a need for a space for folks who identify within the Black diaspora who do this work. So being advocates, sexual violence, domestic violence prevention specialists, folks who are in this functional area of the work that we do. And specifically, a space is needed for Black folks, African American folks, and the entire diaspora, because we sit in a very nuanced intersection of what it means to do anti violence work, whether it's prevention, support, response, education, training, but also being a part of a community that has historically been stereotyped as hyperviolent, right? There's a very interesting intersection that exists between our community and the work that we do for those of us who work in this field. And so it's a lot to take in, it's a lot to bring home. It's very hard for us to work or kind of like move in and out of working in our prevention or response aspect or our advocacy aspect, and then we come home and kind of see some of those same things happening within our own community, and we're seeing it on social media. We see things within the news in our community, and so I think having a space where folks who are experiencing some of the same things, although not a monolith, right, some of us who are experiencing some of the same things are able to come together and say, hey, I see you, I hear you. Here are the lessons I've learned doing this work. Here are the strategies I use. And also, it was a space for us to figure out how we can connect further with each other and be kinder to one another. And that's something that we're going to touch on this year during Diaspora Dialogues.
Great. I love the concept of diaspora dialogues and the emphasis around networking and connecting. I think it's really great what you have planned for this year. Can you share more about what inspires you the most about creating these opportunities to celebrate community and connect at Nova's annual training event?
Community is something that's super important to me, and I think it's one of the backbones of my community, specifically the Black community. I think about the movements. I think about the work that we've done historically, generationally. We are people who are very much community based. When we come together to think about the collective and work with the collective and strategize with the collective, we figure out a space for everyone within the movement that we are trying to do, right? So if someone is not particularly made to be on the front lines, can they open their purse and donate money to the people doing the work or the organizations doing the work? Okay. If that's not an option, we have educators available to do educating and to train. Do we have folks who will take care of things around the house while we're out doing all the things, like thinking about kind of what that looks like historically for us? Is something that has been very important to me as I develop my kind of philosophy as a victim advocate, but also kind of how I expand that into the roles that I serve and even here at Nova. So for me, when it comes to creating community, it's kind of like an ode or kind of like an offering back to the ancestors, in my opinion, which are the people who got us here to do this work. If we're drawing on the lessons that we've learned from folks who have been in the victim advocacy field for 20 plus years to the folks who are just starting out, right? There's something for all of us to learn. There's something for all of us to network with. And I think that's going to be important. And so that is why creating these community spaces is super important to me.
Great. Thank you so much, Asia. You said some very powerful words, from collective action, collective power, to that intergenerational strength and advocacy. And I know that's something that a lot of communities can call on, but specifically for communities across the diaspora, having those ancestors kind of speak to you along the way, right?
Yeah.
Closing your eyes and thinking about, what move do I make at this moment? And
Yeah.
finding some inspiration and strength, I think, is really powerful. So Diaspora Dialogues would be an event at Nova 51. Our conference is virtual this year. And although we can't be in person, you all can still connect with Aysia through Diaspora Dialogues, joining in that virtual session. We have this event planned for you all. We'd really love for you all to register and attend.
Yes,
And
please.
Aysia, I don't know if you want to share a little bit. What were some of the feedbacks or quotes that you heard from participants of last year? And how are they excited? Will they be coming back and joining you this year?
Well, I hope so, because hello, we need y'all to come back. But I think one of the big things that I took away from last year, which was like the first time we did it, was just how needed like this space was. Hearing like, hey, thank you for this space was super powerful and super meaningful for me. But that wasn't the question. As far as the things that we heard last year, outside of just having the space in general, one of the things that really stuck out to me, which is why we're kind of leaning into this year, is there was a conversation had with an advocate who had been doing this work for about 25 plus years. And one of the things that they said was that they would like to learn more strategies about how we can be kinder to one another. This work that we do, whether it is for domestic violence, sexual violence, military victim advocacy, homicide, all of the crimes, right? It can harden us within this particular field. Hearing a lot of the stories, the trauma, the experiences people have had, and navigating systems with survivors can kind of make us a little bit hard in regards to how we show up in our personal lives or how we interact interpersonally with our colleagues. So we have the skills to help the survivor, but then we don't take those skills with us because we're so exhausted. And so this person in particular was like, I want us to strategize more around being kinder to one another so that we are not further perpetuating harm onto ourselves. Because that intra-communal dialogue is something that is very important. And as a marginalized population that is constantly being hit with so many different things, and there's so many, microaggressions and all of the things that we experience, the last thing that we need is to do it to ourselves, and to do it to each other. And so taking that, like that really stuck out to me. And I think in the midst of, with Nova trying to meet the current needs of the moment that we're experiencing right now, I think this is the best time for us to bring someone in who can facilitate a discussion around, strategizing and relationship building and how to really be, the best cousin. That's what we call ourselves in Diaspora Dialogues. We're all cousins. So welcome to the cookout, right? We call ourselves cousins. So how can we be, the best cousin that we can be to each other? And that is kind of what we're going to look at this year. And so that was something that really stuck out to me last year.
Thank you for sharing that and, allowing us to hear, some of those real life struggles, kind of those uphill climbs that so many of our communities and our advocates have to go through.
Yeah.
When we're thinking about just surviving and doing this work, it's very, very common for us as advocates to put self-care and wellness to the side for
Yeah.
ourselves. And sometimes we do say, we need to practice self-care, we need to practice wellness, we need to practice intentionality. That's really
Mhm.
easy to repeat to others because we know the script, but how are we looking about, in that mirror for ourselves? So
Yeah,
I love that you
exactly.
all are creating that network and that opportunity to reflect, the opportunity to build, the opportunity to connect. I heard a little sneak peek of maybe a guest speaker coming. So we really, really, really would love for you all to join and the conversations with Aysia for Diaspora Dialogues and beyond. We have other communities of practice that will be joining and affinity groups that will be coming together. But here's our last question, Asia, if you will, and
Okay.
it kind of plays on our podcast name and our conference, Why We Advocate Celebrating Community. But our podcast is the Why We Advocate podcast. So, what is your ultimate why when you do this work? What keeps you moving forward through all of the battles, through all of the opportunities? What is your why when it comes to this work?
I feel like I have the same answer every time, but there's a little piece of it that has changed. So growing up, like I was always that kid that was just that always had something to say. Like that was just me. And it was actually a time recently where I was creating a presentation and I had said something along those lines, like within the presentation about how to be an advocate, right? Um, so along the lines of speaking up for, someone. And the feedback that I got from that was, we're not the voice of people who are silenced or of people who are unheard. We are a spotlight. We are the platform for their voice. And at first I was like, okay. But I took the time to really like step back and be like, hold on. Like that makes a lot of sense because and what I further, train folks on when it comes to like, how to be an advocate, right? We're talking about mirroring language of the survivor. We're talking about empowering survivors to own their narratives. We're talking about allowing survivors to make their own decisions about the resources that they want to utilize, the systems that they want to engage with. We are telling them to tell us what they want, right? Again, getting that ownership back. So who am I to be like, well, I'm also going to be your voice? That's not how that works. And so something that I say a lot when, I'm training campuses, or talking to campus advocates is a lot of times we have to check our ego at the door because it's really nice for us to say, oh yeah, I'm a voice for people who are often silenced. That is further silencing that person if you're being their voice and they're not using their own voice. And so while I've had this deep passion for being an advocate, an activist, an educator, I've also had to learn how to tailor that to really be trauma informed and to really be survivor centered in the way of, okay, so you're saying this and you have the skills but your behaviors aren't matching if you're saying you're speaking up for people who don't speak up for themselves. And there are times where you do need to advocate for people in a way that they may not be able to communicate. And so you have to speak the language for them, right? Whether it's again navigating judicial systems, navigating campus systems, or community organizations, right? That's different. But when we're talking about advocacy as a whole, it's not just speaking up for folks. It's not speaking in place of folks. It's taking our survivors and placing them on a platform and giving them the spotlight so that we can hear what they need and what they're saying. And truly taking the time to understand that is now helping me continue to push forward throughout all the chaos that's happening. It makes me realize how important this work is and how many people have the voice, have the plan. They just need the platform. And if I'm able to give that to them, that is what I want to continue to do while I'm here. And so that's my why.
Thanks so much, Asia. So much great words of wisdom and reflection. And I think you're right. When it comes to our role as advocates, it's really inspiring and cultivating that change, right? Working
Yeah.
alongside with our survivors, our victims, with our communities, shedding light on topics and difficult conversations, bringing forth what the realities are so we can be a better community of advocates. And I feel strongly that that's what Diaspora Dialogues is all about. And I'm glad it's
Yeah.
back for Nova 51.
I'm
I'm so
excited.
glad that you'll be hosting it as well with our other colleagues and maybe guest speakers. More to come on that. But to get all the information on what is going to be included, what information, what conversation, what date, what time. Register for Nova's annual training event. So with that, I'm going to
Yes.
close us out by saying thank you, Aysia, for joining us today. I'm feeling inspired. I'm feeling ready. I hope you all are too. And thank you for tuning into our episode, and stay tuned for more information about how Nova is celebrating community on the next Why We Advocate podcast episode. Thanks so much. Have a great day.